welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of Bowling Green City Council. Kay, would you please begin by calling the roll?
Osbacher.
Here.
Gordon.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Jeffers.
Here.
Robinette.
Here.
Rowland. Here. Zanfordino.
Here.
The minutes of the meeting that was held on February 20th, 2018 were presented to council prior to this meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. The minutes are approved as presented. Okay, we have correspondence this evening.
Yes, I have two items tonight. Distributed to you prior to the meeting was a listing of budget transfers to be made for the month of March, and those need your approval.
Is there a motion to approve the budget transfers?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. The budget transfers are approved as presented.
And I also have, and was distributed to you on Friday, the Parks and Recreation fees for 2018, and that requires a motion to approve as well.
Thank you. Assuming that everyone's had an opportunity to review the documents, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. The fee structure is approved as presented.
And that's all I have.
Thank you, Kay. I don't believe we have any special recognitions this evening. So at this point, we move to lobby visitation. Kay, is there anyone who has signed up to run?
Not this evening.
Great, thank you. We move on to the introduction of new legislation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Zanfordino.
from the Transportation and Safety Committee, we have an ordinance amending and adopting Section 73.15B of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding speed limits.
Thank you, John. Official reports, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of council, and all assembled. It's good to be with you this evening, and I very much regret that I missed the presentation of the community action plan last Wednesday, and I've followed this as you have with a great deal of interest, and I'm glad you had a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. I tried to reach our friend Adam today, Adam Rosa in Chicago, but he was tied up, so I left a message for him. I look forward to talking with him here sometime soon, but like you have, I've been watching this process since really trying to help out in different ways since 2016. I know Bruce can probably tell us exactly to the day, probably how long it's been involved in that, but it's been, from my standpoint, very, very pleasing to see how this report evolved and the shape it took. Additionally, I was somewhat concerned about the first draft I saw and so forth, because I thought it was all bogged down in detail. It wasn't get to some of the points and so forth. Well, they did, with your help, really put the focus on where effort should be lodged. And obviously, this document is like taking on a massive book or something and trying to digest it and so forth. And it's not that massive, but it's full of some pretty challenging thoughts and ideas. And it's a good, from my perspective, a very good roadmap into the future. And it's not going to happen, as we all know. We've been telling ourselves this. It's not going to happen in real quick fashion or in push-button-like fashion and so forth. And clearly, one of the more vexing aspects of the whole thing has to do with zoning issues and taking a hard look at our code and trying to pick out those targets, those special points that will either help to move things along or impede progress as we've seen the recommendations come forward. I was especially pleased that they did identify a number of other communities where things have worked. And that's something we all have talked with Adam, and we've mentioned from time to time. We all had kind of some of our own ideas on places that seem to be moving right along and so forth, and I think that's very, very helpful. But it's, I like the focus, I like the way they've crafted the recommendations. There's plenty of opportunities to go after, as we, I don't know who came up with the phrase, but the low-hanging fruit, and so are some things that will make more sense than others, and some things that are just simply going to take a fair amount of time. But I just want to commend all the citizens and working with members of council, the planning commission, and others who have been involved in this whole process. It's been a long, involved process, but I think it's pointing in the right direction, and there's a lot of meat on the bones there, as the old saying goes, and that we can begin to work away. And I know you're eager to do that, and working with the planning commission and trying to delineate some of those aspects of the report that probably make more sense than others to move forward on. Just shifting gears a little bit here, we've been having fun with the university because it reflects the community as well. The university and the community has a chance to make a strong run at $150,000 for improvements to the ice arena. And this is part of the Kraft Hockeyville USA program. It's been going on for a number of weeks. It only has about 5 days to go. You can go on the website, krafthockeyville.com, and then punch in 43403, and up pops the Slater Family Ice Arena, and you can either add a note, or I took the time to try to answer 3 particularly vexing questions. I thought were very appropriate questions and so forth, but it was an interesting process to do that, and we only can hope, because that we might have a strong shot at the $150,000 and the chance for an NHL team to come to our community in preseason. That would all be very, very exciting, and so they've been hard at work trying to generate interest in this, and as I said, there's about 5 days to go here, and the potential is, I think, very exciting, very, very promising, because we know over the more than 50 years of the ice arena what that facility has meant to this community. I've said I've been with 4 universities. I've studied and been involved with so many others throughout the country, and especially in terms of city-university relations. And I've never seen a facility like this that's been so ingrained in the life of our community. And it's one of those places that's used probably at least maybe 20 out of every 24-hour day. And so it's promising, and let's hope for the best there in that. I just simply want to also end on a note, and I hope I'm not misunderstood in any way, shape, or form on it and so forth, but I'm also so pleased that the charter review process is underway. And a lot of us have been long looking forward to getting the process up and running. We have a strong, with your input and your help and others and recommendations, we have a very, very strong commission led by 2 outstanding people. And so I'm very optimistic that the process will move along. It's important that it move along and not be impeded in any way, shape, or form. And we're working hard, of course, in keeping with the guide for charter commissions by the National Civic League and so forth. And while temptations are very, very real, one of the important points here is the involvement of elected officials should end at the point of when the commission members are appointed. And because we all know that those recommendations will be coming forward to you and to the administration, and we'll have public hearings and ample opportunities for input from the general public. And of course, you have your own process that you'll be weighing in and considering various aspects of any recommendations that are made. With that, Mr. President, members of council, that concludes my report, unless you have questions of me.
Other questions for Mayor Edwards? Very good, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. We have Mr. Fawcett standing in for Ms. Treader this week. Joe, do we have anything?
No report.
Other questions for Joe? Thank you. And Ms. Sabler from the Planning Department is on vacation this week, as is Ms. Otley with the Parks and Recreation Director. City Attorney, Mr. Marsh.
I announced I would have a report, and that's why the crowd. No report.
Okay, we'll carry that over to the next meeting.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
gotta save it.
Utilities Director, Mr. O'Connell.
Just wanted to update you on my trip to DC this past week, last week I should say, for the APPA legislative rally. So we went and met with our legislative officials, federal legislative officials in DC. So we did get time to talk with Representative Latta and Senators Portman and Brown about the issues that the federal government maybe can help us out in ways that they impact us on the public power side. So the big ticket items we talked about really were the federal sequestration to the budget process as far as it relates to the Build America bonds and the subsidy payment that we're supposed to receive. They did cut that with the sequestration, and so if that goes through the life of the debt for Bowling Green, just our portion alone will be $6 million that we'll have to pay. And that money will have to come from our local customers because it's not coming from the federal government. AMP overall is all the members together in the projects is probably close to $80 million. So there's a substantial impact on all of our systems, but especially Bowling Green. We also talked about transmission charges that have gone up in recent years, and I was able to share both the BAB's impact and also the transmission charges to all three elected officials. But for transmission, our fees each month are $500,000 just for transmission. We also pay $500,000 a month for capacity to PJM. But the transmission side of it, that $500,000 per month, that's up about 35% since 2016, and it's even up more than that when I first started back in 11 and 12. We were paying about $150,000 a month for transmission costs. In 2016, we were paying about $380,000 a month, and then in 2018, we're paying $500,000 a month. And so we've been trying to get with members of FERC that review and oversee the transmission projects that are submitted from First Energy, and how those are approved, and going through that review process to say we should have some input into what those projects are and how they're being approved and cost allocated back to the customers. And those costs aren't just being paid by public power entities. First Energy and AEP and all the transmission owners, their own customers are paying those costs through their bills as well. So they're impacting everybody across the states. So try to relay the message and let them know the impacts we're seeing locally and see how they can help us. So overall, it was well attended, and I think the meetings went pretty well for the most part. That's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Questions for Brian?
I didn't catch what year it was that the transmission fees were $150,000, just curious.
That was around 11 and 12.
2011, 2012?
Yeah, so you can see that over time, those costs have gone up each year. And what we're seeing really is the transmission owners are putting more dollars into building projects, and they get a guaranteed rate of return back for those investments. It could be 10 to 12%, typically it's more like 12% per year. So the more money they put into construction projects to build the transmission system out, the more profit they make. And so it's kind of almost like a no-brainer for them to, well, what can we build this year? And increase those dollars so they can get more return on their money. Because the dollars are not there on the generation side, but they are there on the transmission side. So that's where they're putting their funds.
Types of power are they building for?
Well, that's part of the the concern we have is that there's really two buckets of projects. I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but the first bucket I would say is projects that are reviewed and approved by PJM and FERC, and those projects are becoming smaller in dollar value. And the second bucket is what they call supplemental projects, and those are projects that are not reviewed and approved by the federal oversight, and those dollars in that bucket have increased substantially. So the projects that aren't being reviewed with, or having some kind of oversight to say that we need these for the system, we need to have redundancy and reliability, those projects they're basically able to do on their own, and then they get a return on that investment. And we're not trying to say that the dollars weren't spent in past years, and maybe we do need to spend money on transmission to make sure that our system is reliable and we can provide service to our customers, because we are transmission dependent from Edison to get power to our customers. So we're not saying we don't want to see improvements to the system, but do all these projects make sense? Do they all need to be done? Are they worthwhile projects, and should we be paying for those projects? That's what AMP was trying to do and trying to get pushed through on the federal side. So that was really the message we carried to the elected officials this past week.
And how did the elected officials respond to you?
They're aware of it, and they think they've been very helpful. All three of them actually have been very helpful to us and helped public power over the past several years. I mean, these city governments move slow, and federal governments move even slower. So it's not an easy ball to push. And we're not the only ones that are talking about this. They hear the opposite message from the investor and utilities and the transmission owners about how they need to do these projects, how they need to improve the system and spend the money to create reliability, redundancy, for the benefit of the customers. So, there's differing messages, and like I said, we're not saying that we shouldn't pay our share of these projects, and we shouldn't pay our what we're due to pay, but there does seem to be an imbalance in when the pot of money and the projects that are not being reviewed is growing, and the projects that are being reviewed is kind of staying the same or shrinking. So we just want to see some oversight and some review of the projects, really.
Thank you. I answered my question.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, appreciate it. Public Works Director, Mr. Kraft.
I have no report, Mr. Questions for me?
The questions from Mr. Kraft. Thank you. That completes our official reports. Do we have any council committee reports this evening?
Mr. President,
Mr. Harrell.
the Public Lands and Buildings Committee met twice last week. We met a week ago on Monday, and the purpose of that meeting was to have an overview and then set up a structure for how we're going to tackle the food truck opportunity. And one of the decisions made from that meeting was to try a slightly different format for a more of a working session format for our second meeting, which was last Saturday. And I wanted to take a moment to commend fellow committee members Sandy Rowland and John Zamprandino for taking a chance and doing something that was not traditional. And that was, we decided instead of for that working session, instead of having the typical we're up here and people want a speaker in the lobby and come to the mic and so forth, we wanted to have something that was more interactive. And so we had the table set up in a square, and everybody that wanted to participate sat at the table, and it was more of an interactive as opposed to segmented. And although the attendance wasn't as good as I would have hoped, in fact I bought way too many bagels and donuts for Saturday, it was nonetheless very productive. It wasn't quantity as much as quality. We had a couple people speak for quite a while, and it was a very educational, cordial, civil discourse, and so that's what we accomplished on Saturday. But I wanted to make sure that I called out Sandy and John for taking a chance and switching things up a little bit so that we could try that format. We want to continue to meet at a fairly frequent pace to get this moving. So we have a meeting that we're scheduling for a week from today on Monday, March 12th at 4 o'clock. So Monday, March 12th at 4 o'clock. Part of the reason for having it at 4 is trying to change the times a bit to encourage people to show up that maybe couldn't for other reasons. Plus, honestly, I also wanted to thank Lori Treader and Joe Fawcett for taking time last Saturday morning. I mean, they are at like a lot of meetings. They work during the day, they come to meetings at night, and they showed up on Saturday morning, which was, they're usually way above and beyond. This was way above and beyond. So I thought, yeah, maybe we'll give them a break and have the next meeting at 4 o'clock. And so 4 o'clock next Monday. At that time, we'll hopefully be able to get together and figure out, I'm hoping to meet on a weekly basis until we can get this to the point where we're going to hand it off. What we'll cover on Monday is, on Saturday, we started to go through various factors that are different aspects of how we can put this together. And so we're going to continue along that list and hopefully get through that list, and then just take a step back, try and figure out, based on what we've determined, what the best next step is. So we're moving along. The key is balance, to be methodical and thorough. And I think so far we've done that, and that's the way we want to approach this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Clerk, additional council committee reports.
Mr. President, from the Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the CAP. We had our public presentation on the final product last week. I'm really happy with what Camaros came up with. I think, as the mayor outlined, it gives us a lot of things to look forward to and to work on. And all 7 of us now have this document, this approach to consider, and it makes suggestions and it makes recommendations and gives, as the mayor said, other cities to compare to, which is really helpful. But I don't think that we necessarily agree on everything. I know in discussions that I've had with individual council members, there's different perspectives on how to proceed, probably in particular with any kind of inspection or registration for rental properties. So I think that's one thing we'll have to talk about. Again, in my view, and this is just my opinion, other councilors have their own views, I think the main thing is to lay the groundwork for investors to look at Bowling Green and think that we're a city that has a plan that we believe in, that we can stick to, and then they'll bring their money and invest in new structures. And at the same time, we hope to do things that encourage owners of individual older aging properties to maintain them and to hopefully in some cases return some properties back to single family status. That's a tough road to hoe, but we'll see what we can do with that. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things, Mr. President, and that'll probably about do it for me.
Thank you, Bruce.
I just have a question for Bill, the chair of the committee looking at food trucks. We'll be meeting here, of course.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
And will
thank
it
you.
be in this fashion?
This fashion. Yeah, a couple of reasons for that. Good questions, thanks. One is for what we want to do and the time of day and everything. Setting up the tables takes a little bit of time. And I think now that we've had a taste of the type of interaction, it should work. We have to be conscious of the physical message being sent, but I think if we still have that kind of interaction, we'll be okay.
And again, public input will be.
Oh, yes.
Welcomed and encouraged.
Every meeting, yes, thank you, every meeting, hopefully we have public input, definitely. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. President. Back on the cap, I did take quite a few notes and read the document a couple of times for our last meeting. As I mentioned at that meeting on the 28th, I'm personally very extremely encouraged by the community action plan, and I appreciate the hard work of the committee that went into it. And I hope we can use the cap in the spirit in which it was created as a strategy upon which we could build a foundation of continuous improvement to our community and for economic and development and growth, as Bruce mentioned. But I would also like to suggest a methodology that I believe aligns with President Ottbacher's goal of having that, going after that low-hanging fruit, and allows each member to pursue projects that are important to them as we move forward. And I suggest that we collectively identify a group of 10 or 15 projects to focus on. And then once we have a list, establishing a priority within that list, and then with the prioritized list in hand, execute. You know, I read and I reread the cap over the weekend, and you know, one theme continues to jump out: zoning. Our zoning code is a patchwork of amendments made over decades without the benefit of an overarching strategic zoning plan. We all know that. And I suggest that reviewing and revising the specific sections of the zoning code can, and I believe should be, part of our eventual prioritized list of cap issues to tackle. And that review of Chapter 113 that Bill and his committee are working on, I mean, that already fits into this category, in my opinion. I mean, we've already taken steps in that direction. But the cap doesn't have all the answers, and indeed it doesn't have really any answers. As noted on page 3 of the cap, it says, the cap seeks to advance the land use plan's goals through an implementable set of strategies and actions that will contribute to the revitalization of the east side and other central neighborhoods. These are important goals, but we must remember that nearly 3/4 of Bowling Green is not covered by the cap, or shown on the map on page 6 of the cap document. And during this ongoing process, I will work to remember and remind all of us, one, not to forget that we represent the entire city, that if Bowling Green Schools is successful at the ballot in its bond issue, that the Crim School, as well as Kenwood and Conneaut, will eventually be closed. And those are integral parts of part of the analysis. So creating both opportunities and challenges for zoning. And that we must understand the BGSU master plan, where BGSU owned properties are within the cap target areas, because knowing what BGSU will do with its property, and as we all know, BGSU building projects don't have to comply with our zoning code. It's nonetheless important when we are considering amending our zoning code, that knowledge. And I also suggest that we take a look at the education and training that we provide to the Zoning Board of Appeals on a regular basis to ensure that they understand both the zoning code and their important role in its enforcement. And I'm looking forward to pulling up our sleeves and getting to work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I do like your suggestion about, as it relates to each council person, taking a look at the cap and maybe coming up with some ideas that are important to them, and then we could perhaps, as you also suggest, bring those together and see if there's some consistency between some of the things that we're looking at, and make those our short-term goals. I would suggest that it'd be a good idea for council members to start thinking along the lines that Mr. Robinette suggested. And Greg, maybe the next step for us would be to organize a discussion with Lori and Joe and Heather and the mayor, that we could perhaps discuss it in a little greater detail and find out what that might look like as an organizational effort. So thank you very much. I think it's a great idea. Do we have any other council committee reports? Very good. We move forward to the reading of legislation.
Legislation for first reading. Ordinance number 8669 for first reading. Ordinance amending and adopting sections 73.15B of the codified ordinances of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding speed limits. Legislation for second reading. Ordinance number 8667 for second reading. Ordinance authorizing the Utilities Director to purchase electric metering equipment from the City of Wyandotte, Michigan. Ordinance number 8668 for second reading. Ordinance authorizing Utilities Director to accept a utility easement from WBGU Investment Incorporated. Legislation for third reading. Ordinance number 8662 for third reading. Ordinance authorizing the transfer of approximately 3.99 acres of land in the Woodbridge Business Park expansion to the Bowling Green Community Development Foundation in lieu of dues and declaring an emergency.
I move to adopt the emergency clause for ordinance 8662.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Kate, would you please call the roll?
Gordon?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Jeffers?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes, the motion passes. The emergency clause is adopted for ordinance 8662. I move to adopt ordinance 8662.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Kate, would you please call the roll?
Harold?
Yes.
Jeffers?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes.
The motion passes. Ordinance 8662 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8663 for third reading. Ordinance authorizing the Utilities Director to enter into a contract or contracts with Andred Separation Incorporated without advertising and bidding to provide maintenance services to the centrifuge at the Water Pollution Control Facility.
I move to adopt ordinance 8663.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Kate, would you please call the roll?
Jeffers?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
The motion passes. Ordinance 8663 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8664 for third reading. Ordinance certifying to the county auditor delinquent sewer charges.
I move to adopt ordinance 8664.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Kate, would you please call the roll?
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Jeffers?
Yes.
The motion passes. Ordinance 8664 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8665 for third reading. Ordinance amending and adopting section 31.26 of the codified ordinances of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio regarding roll call vote.
Mr. President,
Mr. Harrell.
move that we adopt ordinance 8665.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Harrell.
just wanted to give a little background on this particular ordinance. A long time ago, when I was on council before, in 84, well, actually 85, the people that were on council included a very distinguished pillar of the community, David Elsaw. He was on for the second time after having been off for a while. He was a member of the non-majority party at the time. And the roll call vote back then was alphabetic, but it always started at the top. There was no rotating. And Dr. Elsaw just didn't like being called second all the time. So we got together and decided, well, okay, we'll do it alphabetic and rotate, which is from 1985 up until, you notice the latest roll call vote, up until now. And so it's worked rather well. You're welcome. Anyway, I've been in the lobby for almost 12 years, the last 12 years, until moving to a cushier chair. And I noticed, even though I knew the order was alphabetic rotating, that there's a lot of jumping around because we're not seated alphabetically. And so I had a thought for many years. I thought, well, maybe we should just make sure the seating is alphabetic with the president of council anchored in the middle. Then that's just really not a very good idea. So I thought, well, the problem is it jumping around, not that people are alphabetically seated. So what this very admittedly, almost embarrassingly, minor matter involves is, from the lobby's viewpoint, making it marginally better, where we still rotate the roll call vote, but we go left to right. left to right. And so it still rotates, and so everybody can see, how it's going. Now, those of us that are on council, we pretty much flow in the cadence. I know I'm after Daniel 6 out of 7 times, except when I'm starting. But from the lobby, and possibly as well those that view the meeting, it improves it a little bit. So that's the motivation for the legislation. I'm hoping that people see it as there's no downside. It's low-hanging fruit. That's the theme of tonight. And so why not enact something that might make things a little bit better and doesn't take much effort. And so that's the motivation. Let's adapt. Let's try and improve things where we can. Just because you're grabbing low-hanging fruit does not diminish the harvest. So we have lots to do. This is not going to accomplish it, but it may move us a little bit along. So that's my motivation, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Bill, if you used any more metaphors, we'd have a real problem. I do find a problem with your apparent hatred of the alphabet. I myself am a proponent of supporting the alphabet whenever possible. All kidding aside, I don't really think that the way we do it is a problem. I appreciate your thoughtfulness and of course you're thorough. I guess I just, without seeing a real advantage to your idea, I think I probably would prefer to keep things the way we have it now.
I appreciate that. I know as far as metaphors, when the mayor was giving his report, he was talking about low-hanging fruit and meat on the bone, and I just wanted to interrupt and say, can we get something to eat?
Still on the food trucks thing, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And I understand that there's different perspectives on this. There's the one perspective that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's the other perspective of, if there's a chance of making it better, why not? So I understand that, and I'm on the side of you know what, it's a marginal improvement, why not? And so, but I understand where you're coming from.
Mr. President, at the risk of offending Mr. Jeffers while using another metaphor, I think it ain't broke and there's nothing to fix. And I would prefer to leave things the way they are. And two, I appreciate the thoroughness of Mr. Harrell, but I just don't see it does anything any better than what we already have. And I would prefer to stick with what we've been doing over these years.
Thank you, Sandy. I feel the same way that you do. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. President, I would just say I'm going to be voting for the legislation tonight. I don't see any harm in keeping things the way that they are, but I also don't see any harm in changing things a little bit on the off chance that they might help folks in the audience. The way I figure it is that if for some reason we feel that it works less well than the way we've been doing things, we can always change it back. So otherwise, I think Bill covered the other points that would make in favor of that.
Thank you.
I've been grappling with this minor issue because I could tell it's very important to Bill. And I checked with a few people in the audience just to see if there was, if it was kind of hard to follow the flow as it currently is, and I didn't get that sense. So I, after much navel gazing, I am going to vote for the status quo. Is navel gazing a metaphor?
I think it is.
It's food if it's an orange.
Very good. I think we've covered it. Kay, would you please call the roll?
Roland,
No.
Zanfordino,
No.
Osbacher,
No.
Gordon,
Yes?
Harold,
Yes.
Jeffers,
No.
Robinette.
Yes.
The motion does not pass, thus ordinance 8665 is not adopted.
Mr. President.
Mr. Harold. In case anyone is concerned about my feelings being hurt, had it passed, of course I would have been elated. It not passing, I'm going to very self-servingly look at it as, well, Bill, you did such a great job back in 1985. It's lasted all these decades, and we see no reason to change what you did in 1985. So that's the way I'm going to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there any other business to come before council this evening?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jeffers?
I want to comment on an important issue, and it's about violence, and particularly gun violence, and particularly gun violence in schools. I'm well aware this is not in our purview. I certainly appreciate Dr. Scrucci and our police and fire chiefs getting together with folks from the community and working on making our children that all of us care about a little bit safer. I think part of the issue is dealing with questions of guns and gun laws. And since we have no power that I can discern over this issue, I just wanted to say publicly that I have contacted Representative Gavarone and Senator Gardner, and to just express my desire that they work with Governor Kasich and see what they can do on the gun end of this issue.
Thank you, Bruce.
Mr. President, I would just like to thank Bruce because he's been a leader on this issue from the time that he's served on our council. I forget exactly what year it was, but you know, Bruce, you shepherded in a really well thought out and crafted resolution on the same issue. And so I just find it sad that that we're still talking about it, despite your good work on that. So thank you for being proactive, taking the initiative, and trying to get us closer to that end goal of making sure that our kids don't have to be afraid to go to school.
Thank you.
Mr. President, since the topic came up, let me just take this opportunity to thank the superintendent and the school board. I attended the meeting, and I'm saying he was there, and Joe was there, and a couple others. But I went there as a parent, I'll be honest with you. I didn't go there as a council person. I went there as a parent of a teenage son in the high school. And I was extremely impressed with a lot of things at that meeting, the organization of it, the structure of it, the decorum of the entire community. But mostly I was impressed with the response and the ongoing action of our police and fire divisions, and as well as the school system. I think they're approaching this issue, and have been for some time, in a way that is positive and will help the community. It seemed clear that the rest of the community that was there felt similarly. There were no negative comments. Everybody offered positive insight and some ideas. But I just want to say, as a parent, I'm comfortable with the way our community is handling this issue, and I want to, again, just want to thank the school board and the superintendent for putting on that community forum, and the contribution from the fire chief and the police chief as well. It was just all positive, and I think we're in a good place in a community in dealing with this serious issue. So.
Thank you, Greg. I was going to say much the same thing. Thank Mr. Scrucci and the school board for putting together that forum. And the participation of our fire and police chief. We really appreciate you being there and contributing. To me, when I read the account, I was unfortunately not able to be there, but when I read the account, I could not help but be impressed about how we as a community come together and discuss in an intelligent and rational way such important issues. To me, that says an awful lot about us as a community. We come together, we express our concerns, we discuss the relevant issues, and try to assure that we have policies and procedures in place that are going to do the best that we can do at the local level to protect our children and other members of our community. So I think that not only should we congratulate Mr. Scrucci and the school board, I think that we should also congratulate ourselves as a community, because I think that it says an awful lot about us. So thank you all very much. Is there any other business to come before council this evening?
I did want to bring up that next month I'm going to propose legislation for a dress code for city council. I'm just kidding.
Thank you for that. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Wait, second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We are. Thank you, everyone.